Aloha, welcome everyone. It's so great to see everyone. Wow, we have about almost 90 people who jumped on right away, which is quite extraordinary. If you'd like to just say hello in the chat while I do my introductions and maybe let us know where you are calling in from, that would be really wonderful. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to start with an introduction and say, my name is Andrea Nandoskar. I'm the Education Program Manager at Historic Hawaii Foundation. And I want to thank you for joining us this morning for a presentation and panel discussion with Professor Kerri Inglis, students from the University of Hawaii at Hilo History Department, and Nicole Garcia, Executive Director of the Honokaʻa Heritage Center. Back in 2019, HHF launched our Story Map series, and we are really thrilled to be continuing this series with a story map of Honokaʻa. The discussion this morning will share some of the context, process, and purpose of the Honokaʻa story map. And most importantly, I think, the reflections from students themselves, because this was a collaborative project. They're going to relay how this project has impacted their view of Honokaʻa and the surrounding area of themselves and their own sense of place. Now, we were hoping to present the Honokaʻa story map today and share a live link, but it's not quite ready to go live. We are almost there. And it will be available soon, and we will certainly send everyone who registered for today's presentation the link once it's live. And we truly appreciate your understanding. The creation of this story map was made possible by our incredible program partners, Cultural Surveys Hawai, the University of Hawaii at Hilo, History Department, the Honokaʻa Heritage Center, and the Historic Honoka Town Project. This program was supported by the Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and the Arts through appropriations from the legislature of the state of Hawaii or grants from the National Endowment for the Arts. Just really briefly, a few housekeeping items. We are live streaming on Facebook and YouTube, and these will be available immediately afterwards for viewing and sharing. If you have questions throughout, please do type them into the chat. We will, we anticipate and we will try very hard to have a Q&A portion at the end where we can address the questions that do come up. And just for those who may be new to Historic Hawaii Foundation, we're statewide, we're a nonprofit, and we help people save historic places. These are sites that tell the stories of the multi-layered history of Hawaii. We do this through education, advocacy, assistance, and protection of and for historic places. I would now like to introduce our speakers. Professor Kerri Inglis teaches Hawaii and Pacific Islands history at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. She resides in Kaloli, Ke'au, in the Moko of Puna, but was born and raised in the Fraser Valley region of British Columbia, Canada. Kerri moved to the islands and earned a BA from Brigham Young University in 1993, completed her MA at the University of Toronto, and returned to Hawaii to pursue a doctorate in Hawaiian history with complementary fields in Pacific and world history at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Joining us later in the program will be Nicole Garcia. Nicole is the Executive Director at Honokaa Heritage Center. Prior to opening Honokaa Heritage Center in 2021, Nicole worked at the Heritage Center of the Co-Education Center under the direction of Dr. Momi Nautian. During this time, Nicole earned her master's degree in heritage management at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. Nicole is committed to preserving and sharing history in the community and works closely with members of her local community to support their desire to gather historical information, document community histories, and develop exhibits. She feels that the most important contribution that she and HHC can make is helping the community share their memories for future generations. Now, to get our presentation started, I would like to introduce Emma Tanigawa, who has played an integral part in our story map project as a student intern. Emma graduated from UH Hilo in May with a double major in Hawaiian history and Hawaiian studies. As a native Hawaiian, Emma is dedicated to learning about and sharing Hawaiian history and connecting people to place. She's going to start us off now by helping us gain a sense of place, introducing Hawaii Island, the district of Hamakua, and Honokaʻa, the focus of our project. Welcome, Emma, and you can share your slide, if you please.
So, ano ai me ke aloha e nā kupa aina mai ka moko ki ave ai ni'i hau ka helelani a me ka po'e I loko nā kihi eha o ka honua ne. Aloha kākou a pau. We mahalo everyone who is here today to share space with us as we venture to the island of Hawaii, also known today as Moko Keawe, in honor of Keawe I Kekahi Ali'i o ka moku, a great ali'i who ruled over this island and is recognized for his overall prosperous and peaceful reign during the 17th century. Rich with wahipana, or storied places, and unique mo'olelo, or stories, Mokuokiawe is the largest island within the Hawaiian archipelago and is home to famous volcanoes such as Mauna Kea. Resting on the slopes of Mauna Kea, wedged between the Moku, or district, of Hilo and Kohala, lies the Moku of Hamakua. The word Hamakua can be translated in many different ways. However, the two most common translations associated with Hamakua is long corner, in a poetical reference to its shape. And the second translation being parent stock, such as the stalk of a kalo or taro plant. When we think of the stalk of a kalo, we know that once planted in the ground, it grows and will eventually provide sustenance not only for those of the current generation, but when properly preserved, will also provide for the many generations to come. With this in mind, some of the individuals who reside in Hamakua today believe that the idea behind the second translation, parent stock, can be interpreted as a metaphor for the many stories of Hamakua that are preserved and passed down from generation to generation, nurturing the minds of the youth. Which brings us to a single town that is located along the western coast of the Moku of Hamakua, known as Honokaʻa, one of the main reasons we are here today. After working on the Honokaʻa story map, I and the many others who have contributed to this project can say with confidence that every ahupua'a, or land division, that runs through Honokaʻa, every building, church, every store, theater, every cemetery, every corner of Honokaʻa has a unique history embedded with mo'olelo, many of them from decades before us. The different mo'olelo of Honokaʻa indeed contributes to the history of Hamakua, Mokuokiawe, and the entire Hawaiian island chain. Because there are mo'olelo from each and every era in Hawaii's history, from before the time of King Kamehameha I to a time when Hawaii opened its doors to immigrants from around the globe, and up until the present day. And with that being said, mahalo again to everyone who took the time to be here today, and I will now hand it over to Humukai.
Aloha nui kākou. Mahalo from myself as well on behalf of all of our students, for all of you for being here today, and a big mahalo to Emma for helping to establish our sense of place and our understanding of the context in which this story map project has been developing and evolving together. My name is Kerri Inglis, and I do teach history here at UH Hilo. I am currently at Mokaulele in the Ahupua'a of Waiakea in the district of Hilo. And just outside my window, I can see Mauna a Wakea. And I'm imagining myself just over the ridge, looking out at Hamakua, taking myself there with all of you, with the mo'olelo and stories that will be shared today. We want to mahalo Historic Hawaii Foundation and Honokaʻa Heritage Center for supporting us in this journey. And it truly has been a journey for myself and my students. We are very interested in and dedicated to understanding not only our sense of place, but our connection to place. And the place is the wahipana of this island. And we do so through learning the mo'olelo, the mele, and the olelo no eao, all those ways that can bring us closer to the places that we hold dear and gain an understanding of the meanings of the place names, but the stories and mo'olelo as well that teach us of the values of these places and the people who have come before us. And that's what has attracted me to this project and projects like this, an opportunity to learn more about Honokaʻa, to learn more about this community within our island, a community that has such a rich and diverse history, and to help to bring that wonder of learning and that desire of learning more about the place in which we live to my students. So even though we are not residing in Honokaʻa, and very few of us are coming from Hamakua district in their upbringing, it is of course a part of our larger island community. And so we feel this kuleana, a responsibility to learn a little bit more about it as well. And so that's kind of how we have approached this project, that we have a responsibility to learn about the communities around us, but then we also have a responsibility to the community to do our best to learn the stories, to do the research, and to retell in the story map format of what we have learned of that. It's also, of course, an opportunity for students in our university setting to develop their own skills or strengthen those skills of research, of analysis, writing, and communicating that which they have learned. It also provides for us an opportunity to explore some very specific historical details within a local history, and then find ways to try and connect or understand that detail or that local significance into a larger context. So this has been a very rewarding experience. It's a journey, though, like any other life journey in which we've had challenges, but we've also had moments of great joy and learning and exploration. Our project started with Historic Honokaʻa town map, and I want to say a special mahalo here to Ross Stevenson and Wendy Tullison and others whose research contributions have really contributed immensely to this project. They are so generous in that they shared a great deal of their research files that they have collected in order to produce historic landmark nominations. So we mahalo you for your generosity and ongoing encouragement and contributions, especially to Ross and to Wendy. That really helped to get us started. Emma Kawaikahi Tanigawa, who you just heard from, has served as an intern in this project, and she's helped a great deal from start to finish. We began by reviewing the town map and then other historical maps, and Emma largely created our own list of sites that we hope to focus on within this project. We had 2 classes of students participating in the project, one at a 200 level, the other at a 300 level here at UH Hilo. And we approached the story map project as group projects, which are always fun and always a little bit challenging. It's certainly important for our students to learn these teamwork skills and to develop those skills of working together and learning together. And I know that there were some challenges along the way, but all of the groups came through in the end and many of the students who you will hear from today were leaders of some of those groups. Each group received their own list of sites from that master list that Emma and I put together. We reviewed some research techniques, and we reviewed available resources in class, and then we sent them on their way to go and to do this exploration within their groups, but also as they divvied up the work on their own at times. There were many markers along the way. We had them submit bibliographies and drafts of their site summaries, and we kept working on this. And to be honest, we're still working on some of those, which is why there's a bit of a delay in getting the site up for you all, but that will shortly be ready for you. And another highlight of working on the project was making visits to Honokaʻa. I know some of the students made their own personal visits, took their own time and made their own trips to Honokaʻa on weekends or afternoons to go and explore and see the places that they were learning about on their own. We also gathered together on a couple of Saturdays and took some small groups of students up. We went as on our own huaka'i together, visited the Heritage Center with Nicole, and did some exploration up and down Mamani Street, and also just cruising around a few other areas there, checking out some stuff and getting our own sense of place, and allowing for the stories and the research itself to become more than just something on a piece of paper, but something that we could see, something that we could feel, something that we could, in essence, participate in. There are many highlights that I could speak of from the project itself in terms of what we've learned and I guess what we've personally and professionally taken away from this. But as in most things, the biggest highlights come from working with our students. Their excitement, their growth, their respect for the past. I have seen it grow rather, and I've seen them grow and develop in their confidence, in their storytelling, and in their research skills. The 6 students that we have participating in our panel today have participated in a variety of ways in the project itself. They've all done some of the research, they've all helped to write summaries, and they've all contributed greatly to it. And so because they are the highlight of the project, I want to turn now to a panel discussion with them. And what each of them is going to do is to share a little bit about how they feel about the project, what they learned from it, what their experiences were in working on the project itself. So I'm going to ask our student panelists to turn on your cameras, and we'll join together in this panel discussion. Our first speaker is Michaela Pasco. Michaela comes from North Kahala here on Hawaii Island. She's a psychology major, and so I think probably taking my class for an elective, yeah. But she wonderful contributions to the class, and I'm excited to hear her talk about her experiences with our Story Map project. So Michaela, time is yours.
Aloha kako, o me kala ko'ui noa noho au I North Kohala. Aloha everyone, my name is Michaela Pasco. I was born and raised in North Kohala here on the Big Island, and I am currently an upcoming senior majoring in psychology, and I actually just picked up a minor in multidisciplinary Hawaiian studies. In my free time, I like to ride horse, play volleyball, and go holo holo with my friends. But for this project specifically, this is the second time that I was lucky enough to participate in creating a story map. In the summer of 2020, I participated in the Wahi Kupuna internship program under the Huliau Pa'a organization. And the moku that they focused on was North Kohala, so I jumped on the opportunity as soon as I got the chance. And during this internship, I worked with a kupuna from Kohala, Anakala Fred Kachola, as well as Kumu Lilia, Kumu Dominique, and Anake Kelly, all from the Huliau Pa'a organization. And together we created a story map of North Kohala that highlighted Nai'ole's journey, which is a mo'olelo that retells the story of Nai'ole, a royal runner, running King Kamehameha to safety in the valleys. And through this journey, he went through the various vahipana that you can find in North Kohala today. And similarly to this internship I did before, I also got to work in a hui this past semester for Kumukai's history course. It was History 333, 20th Century Hawaii. And our hui researched a few places around the Hamakua coast in order to contribute to this story map for Honokaʻa. And my experience for this story map felt a little more challenging compared to the one I did for Kohala, mostly because I worked in a bigger hui and it was sometimes hard to find a time and place for all of our hui members to sit down and talk through our research. But this process has really taught me a lot in the importance about teamwork, communication, and having patience. I also really enjoyed learning about Honokaʻa because I've lived here on this island my whole life and it was always the town over, but I had very little ike about the town itself and about its history. And so doing this project has allowed me to connect with Honokaʻa on a deeper level. And that's why I strongly believe that this is why history can be so valuable to us. It opens that door for learning, for connection, and for understanding. And that pretty much wraps it up for me. Mahalo for listening to my mana'o, and I will now pass it on to the next haumana. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Makaila. Our next presenter is also a history major, and he is from Puna. And David did some other types of research for us in this project. And I'll let him talk more about that. But David, time is now yours.
Aloha kako. Mahalo to you, Kumakai, and mahalo to all of you guys here for joining us. So yeah, I was called upon by Kumakai to write, research 3 essays for Honokaʻa covering a period from pre-18th century all the way up until the 20th century. And in doing so, I got a really good read on the history of Honokaʻa from Hawaiian antiquity all the way up until a few decades ago. Most of my research that I've done here at the university has to do with military history, but also something that I've really been interested in is labor history. And so when I was writing and researching these papers for Honokaʻa, I was really surprised to see figures and episodes from Honokaʻa's history that really speak to the history of labor here in Hawaii. And so I think I'll maybe briefly talk about a few of those figures and episodes. One particular person that I researched for this project was a Japanese person by the name of Katsugoto. For all of you from Honokaa, I'm sure you're intimately aware with who this person is and his tragic story. But for those who don't know, I'll briefly summarize. Katsugoto was born in Kanagawa Prefecture in Japan around 1862, and he immigrated from Japan to Hawaii on a cruise liner, a ship, the city of Tokyo it was called, and he worked just down the coastline from Honokaa at Ho'okala Plantation. And he worked there for a number of years before he accrued enough money to support himself. And he actually sent his brother to a university in San Francisco, I believe. And so this person was very driven. He opened up his own store, and it quickly became a meeting place for Japanese plantation workers in Honokaa and surrounding plantations to, recoup and just talk in their native language and just have a nice place to hang out. And he would even actually go to these plantations sometimes when the plantation workers would bring up gripes that they had with their lunas, their plantation overseers, and he would mediate between the lunas and the workers. And so what he was doing was really great for these workers. But unfortunately, some of these plantation overseers took what Katsugoto was doing as an offense. And unfortunately, he was hung up and lynched in the town on Mamani Street on a telephone pole. And so while this is a dark episode in the town's history, I think it's really important that, you know, we remember and we record stories like this to tell for future generations. Another story involving labor is a person by the name of Jack Wayne Hall. Those who live in the town will know that the Quonset hut that is just Mackay going towards Waipio Valley is named after Jack Wayne Hall. He came to Hawaii in 1935, and he quickly became the chapter president of the local 142 chapter of the ILWU, the International Longshoremen and Warehouse Union. And he and his fellow labor organizers in the ILWU realized that a lot of the workers were still being, exploited for their labor. Plantation overseers would keep these different ethnicities separate. They wouldn't let them talk to each other, talk about their wages, and they would pay them different wages at different rates for the same work. And so he got together, talked with his fellow organizers at the Onaga House just across from the theater, I believe. And, they decided, hey, we got to do something. And what this led to culminated in the Great Hawaii Sugar Strike of 1946. And as a result, it ended a lot of the paternalistic labor relations between the workers and the plantation managers and overseers. And it ushered in this really great beginning of democratization in Hawaii's economy and political institutions. I think that'll do it for me. Thank you.
Mahalo, David. So our next speaker came to us at UH Hilo as a national student exchange student from the state of New York. So we're really pleased to have Kaylee Beatty join us here today. She's back there in New York. So mahalo for finding the right time to join us, Kaylee. And she also is a history major, and I think had some really wonderful experiences through the Story Map project. So Kaylee, let's hear from you now.
Aloha, everybody. As Karu said, my story is going to be a little bit different because I am coming from New York, which is a little far away from Hawaii. And so through the project, I wasn't a leader, but I definitely do think I had a very unique experience. For one of my bigger parts of my project, I did the Honokaʻa Hangwanji mission, and I had a really hard time finding research about it from outside of the community. So I actually went through one of my other classes, and I went to the mission, and I met Miles Okumura, who is the president of the mission hall. So he's in charge of a lot of events that happen there, and his assistant Bernice Kalani, and they were so helpful. I actually did I interviewed them to get their stories, their experiences throughout it, just to really get a feel of the community. And they actually invited me to a couple events, which unfortunately I wasn't able to attend, but it was just great to see the things that they did for their community, and just to learn about where they came from, where the community started, and how even though they are a Hangwanji, part of a religion, that they are open to the entire community and the effect that they have on it. And so I learned about their feeding keiki, and how that it also expanded into feeding, my apologies, feeding keiki and kapuna. And so weekly they provide both meals and groceries for their entire community. And just being able to go and see it in person and meet these people, it really gave me the opportunity to really dive deep into a community just outside of Hilo, which is where I was living on campus, and really trying to be involved in as well. And so I was really grateful for this project and for Kumu and my awesome classmates to just really support me in, whether it was learning a Hawaiian word that I had no idea of, just to basics of a different community. So I do really appreciate it, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Mahalo, Kaylee. Our next presenter is Kepa Ravel. Kepa comes to us from Maui. Oh, he's in Hilo right now, but he's originally from Maui. He is majoring in history and Hawaiian studies as well. Kepa, share your stories with us, please.
Hi, mahalo e kumukai. Ohai ke alo ka aali o A'apueo. Mai kau ke ohana ahiti ka malu'ulu a olele. Ke aloha nui a kakoa paulua. Aloha everyone. My name is Kepa. I'm from Pukalani, Maui. And I would like to start by saying I absolutely love this project. I think it's such a great way to learn about the communities that we come from and that we live in. This is also my second time doing a story map project. The first one we did was in Hilo, and now we got to do Hamakua. And I think it's just such a great way, like I said, to learn about your community. And I think it also shifts your perspective, and you can't help but not take things for granted. Like, you become so appreciative of the stories that you learn when we do this research. And so, and I'm really naturally curious. So my story sites was the Kukui Haile Theater, which no longer stands today, and also Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Honokaʻa. And I had some difficulty as well when I was doing my research, specifically for the Kukui Haile Theater. I didn't find many documents, although I did find some. And so it was kind of a process trying to go through and, like, okay, read this, and okay, it's about Honokaʻa Theater, it's about Honokaʻa. Oh, this is about Kukui Haile. Oh, okay. So I found a couple more things, and I'm like building my excitement. And I love to find connections between places too. So one of the interesting connections that I found for these two places, Kukui Haile Theater and Our Lady of Lourdes Church, Catholic Church in Honokaʻa, is that when the theater was vacated and no longer in use, it was actually taken apart, and the wood from the theater was used to build the hall at Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Honokaa. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I think I have a quote to share real quick. Excuse me. Okay, maybe I don't, but I thought that this project was really good. And one of the first things that I thought about from back when we started the Hilo story map is that I would love to be an educator one day, and I think that this project is so valuable to the communities that we're in. And so from Maui, this place that I have in my background is one of my onehana, one of my birth sands, and it's actually in the moku of Hamakua Loa on Maui. So kind of similar to what the mana'o of Hamakua is that Emma shared. But growing up in these places, we might not know all of the stories, but through projects like this, we have the ability and the resources and materials to go and research and unearth these stories that have so much value and add character to the places that we know and love. And I believe also that resharing and re-earthing these stories is a great way to aloha aina as well. So with that said, mahalo everybody. Mahalo for coming. Mahalo for listening. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Kepa. We really appreciate it. Our next speaker is Pono Kalipi. Pono was born and raised on Molokai. I know he also calls Oahu home. But we're very grateful to have Pono with us today to talk about his experiences with the Story Map project as well. Pono.
Mai ka lewa nu'u, I ka lewa lani, I ka pa'i luna, pa'i lalo, mai ka ho'okui, mai ka halawai. Aloha nui e nā hoa ko Honokaʻa, a me nā po'e a pau. Aloha kākou, my name is Pono Kalipi, and I am from the island of Molokai, born and raised, proud to be born and raised. Moved to Oahu for a couple years, went to Kamehameha Schools Kapalama, and graduated in 2017. Spent my COVID years in Oahu, and finally made it back to Hilo. So I'm currently now residing in Hilo, Hilo, Hanakai, Hilo, in between those. This year, I was able to be a part of the story map, and I thank again everyone for contributing to such a wonderful story. I was also part of the Hilo story map, I believe last semester or last school year, and being able to be familiarized with that was such a treat for me. My experiences with the Honokaʻa story map, it started where I was hoping that I got Waipio Valley. I was like, oh my gosh, like I would sing songs in high school about Waipio Valley, especially a song called My Ka'i Waipio, written by Princess Miriam Like. And I was like, okay, like I think I have a connection there. I've been singing songs. I want to go there. I want to talk about it. I want to be able to talk about it and share it with others in my hui. And sure enough, I was group 1, and my topic in my hui was Waipio Valley, which is so interesting because I've just been manifesting this. But I was one of the students as well to go up to Honokaʻa frequently, actually. Pretty much every time I got off, I also worked full-time at night. So I got the privilege of going to Waipio Valley at the lookout, but also meeting some of our friends down in Honokaʻa. And I think the most important part of this story map, or this project that we have and that we've had the privilege to, is bringing life and bringing awareness to Honokaʻa. Before moving to Hilo, or before coming to the university, I wasn't aware of Honokaʻa. And many people that come to Hilo, UH Hilo, or as a visitor, as a malihini, they don't know anything about Honokaʻa. So being able to study Honokaʻa as an outsider, for me, from Molokai and from Oahu, I'm able to bring life to the stories of Honokaʻa. And yeah, I think it is so touching, because after completing the project with my friends of Kumukai's class, I thought to myself, like, oh, maybe when I do become an educator as well, I can bring life to the stories of Molokai. And when you think of the island of Molokai, you think of deer, you think of the Molokai Ranch, many think of just having nothing, having no McDonald's, whatever, but there are stories to be told. And I think it was so amazing that we were able to retell these stories that maybe haven't been told in decades, years. And I think that is such a blessing and such a kuleana, or a privilege for us to bring life, especially for me as in Waipio Valley. And I think I just want to share with you the first pauku, or the first line of My Ka'i Waipio, the mele that I sung. Kind of brought tears because we sung it in a choir setting, but I'm not going to sing to you guys today. But it says, My Ka'i Waipio, alolua ina pali, e poai a puni ana, a pai na e makai. So that means, beautiful Waipio, with cliffs facing each other, surrounded by cliffs with an opening towards the sea. Mahalo nui again for joining us today. Thank you for listening to my speech, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Mahalo pono. Greatly appreciate you sharing that with us. Our last student presenter is Ke Kuhi Kuhi Pu'uone Ona Ali'i o Kohala Kanahele, lovingly known as Tuhi. Tuhi comes to us from Hilo. She is also a history major, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the project, Tuhi.
Yeah, aloha guys. So yeah, my name is Kikuhi, but also Tuhi, because I share that name with my mother. So yeah, I live in Panaeva, which is in Hilo. It's not too far from the university. But what's funny is during COVID, I actually never stepped foot on the university. So Zoom is really my my space. So I'm really happy to see your guys' faces again. So yeah, like Kumukai said, I'm a history major, and I'm focusing my studies on Hawaiian history specifically. I guess what I really learned in this project is to not be a secondhand historian, and I kind of like coined that. I'm sure other people have said that, haha. But that's kind of what I started calling myself, because through my research, what I would do is pick up a book that another historian wrote. And I'm sure that's part of the process of research and being a historian. But this project really put me out of my comfort zone. And I think that's good. And I think that worked for everyone in the classes. Because Honokaa is such a beautiful, historic, and small town. I mean, small compared to other towns, but it's such a specific topic of research that you couldn't really pick up a book and it wouldn't have a chapter on the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which was my topic. And you couldn't look it up on Wikipedia and there wouldn't be answers there for you. And so I was really out of my comfort zone, and I really, I've been looking for that. I've been looking for the space where I can finally jump out of my secondhand research and actually go to the places myself and visit Honokaʻa, somewhere I've been visiting since I was a kid. And I actually drove down there with my friend and my family, and we took a day out of our semester last year. And we took a day and we walked around Honokaʻa, and I visited the stores there, and we visited some old family friends that lived there. And I asked questions. And what I realized was that this story map project wasn't only to study that one building, the one Seventh-day Adventist church, but it was to teach young students like ourselves how to be a first-hand researcher and how to ask questions and to know that these questions are important. And yeah, I just want to say mahalo to Kumukai, because she gave us the opportunity to actually go out there and use our voices. And I really mahalo that. My specific topic of research in Hawaiian history, what I'm really interested in is post-contact Hawaii up until the overthrow. So that's a really busy time of our history, which means I never really get to step out of that timeline. There's just so much that happens. There's so much religious topics that happens. There's things about governance, politics, foreign affairs. That timeline is just so busy that I never really got to step out of it. And so being tasked with researching a church in Honokaʻa, it made me think about the importance of narrowing down your research and looking at the building itself and being like, that's my topic. That's what I need to discover. And I had to come to a point where I needed to understand that I can't only live as a student through other people and through other people's research. And I think that's my topic, really plain and simple. I'm just mahalo that we got to step out of our comfort zone. And if there's ever another story map project, I would love to be a part of it. So mahalo.
Mahalo nui Tuhi. You know, as I listen to these students articulate their experiences and what they've gained from it, it does my heart good just to realize that they are indeed learning things, intangible things that will stay with them for a very long time, if not forever. And it's wonderful to be able to reintroduce these stories, not just the research skills, but the stories that they are now talking about and have learned about. And, probably some of you listening are thinking, well, we know these, but to have these stories introduced to this new generation and to feel the excitement about it in this new generation is really wonderful. And to have this representation of these two classes with these students here, I hope you've recognized that we've have students from Hawaii Island, but of quite a diverse gathering of students as well from Molokai, from Hawaii Island, from New York. And we're just really pleased to have you all here. So we've been talking a lot about what we have gained from the experience and what we've learned from the community, but we want to now turn some time over to Nicole Garcia, who, as we were told earlier, is the director for the Honokaa Heritage Center. And she's going to talk to us a little bit more about the community's perception of our Story Map project. So Nicole, turn the time to you.
Okay, thank you and welcome everyone. I'm here in Honokaʻa in the historic Botello building on Mamani Street. It's a little noisy around here right now, a lot of traffic and people might be coming in and out the door. So you can hear the creaks of the old building as they come in. I just want to introduce the Heritage Center a little tiny bit. We opened here in July of 2021 after being a part of the University of Hilo for 11 years. We started our own nonprofit and bravely opened our doors during the pandemic and have seen quite a few visitors. Close to 4,000 people have come through here, and a large number of those people that have come through are community members and students like the students talking with you today. We pride ourselves on being a community gathering spot and a place where people can come in and see their family members and tell their stories here in the exhibits. We have frequent visitors that make repeat trips to see us. They come in, they are walking on the street, visiting their friends, and they stop in weekly to just sit down and talk story with us, which is really important because it becomes sort of a heart of the community where they know they can come and share these stories. Our visitors range from tourists that want to learn more about the area to people that have moved to the area that want to know more about where they're living, people from the mainland that have roots here that want to learn their genealogy, as well as people that live down the street that just want to share with us their interesting stories. We frequently get people bringing in their own photos and genealogies that they want to share for our files for future generation to have that opportunity to learn, as well as students coming in and learning about the family stories. We also are an education center. That's actually our main mission, is to educate. And so opportunities to have students come in and learn, field trips. We had a couple other UH groups come. That's one of our major parts of the center, is to get things out into the community in different ways and continue the education component of our center. So during this project, we provided the space sort of on the ground here in Honokaʻa. We had frequent meetings with the organizing committee, and being here made it easy for me to reach out and possibly help students find locations, have questions about what's in our files, pull things directly from the source, as well as ask people that walked in the door if they could help with certain pieces of information. When students emailed, I knew who in the community to contact to get that piece of information. So initially, Professor Inglis brought in her classes, and they spent about an hour here in the center familiarizing themselves with what we provide here on our walls and in our files, what they could access. I had a volunteer here that was born and raised in the area that shared quite a bit of information just from her memories of the town. She was able to access a lot of information that I might not have in my memory. So that was super valuable. They all were then given a map of town, the historic Honokaa Town Project map, and were able to go find their sites. Several of them made their way back to the center for a little additional help or to revisit something they'd seen on the wall to confirm it with what they were seeing down the street. A lot of interaction with the community, which was great. After the students left, I had a few different community members come to me and say, who are these people? The students from UH, what are they doing? What is this project about? And they were thrilled to have that interaction, to be asked these questions. It was such a source of pride, maybe from both ends. You know, the students were able to interact and understand better the sense of place that the people in this really rich community have, and the pride that they have for their town, and the pride for the people that live here to have these students actually come in and take an interest and say, teach me about this building, or tell me a story, or, you know, did you grow up here? Where did you live? And have these questions asked right here while they were just in town wandering about. You know, we have an interesting mix of people walking around town every day, but to have these groups of students that were pretty obviously doing something a little different than just wandering around, drew some attention that was really positive for everybody. It gave me some satisfaction and some new insight to what was going on as well. You know, I've been really busy. Since we opened this center so fast, and, you know, it was kind of bombarded with information and getting things going, I rarely get a chance to just sit down and read these deep histories and learn all of these things. And so students reaching out and wanting more information gave me the opportunity to look deeper into some of these things, including listening to several oral histories, listening to the audio of voices from community members that recorded interviews about 20 to 30 years ago. And I spent several hours just listening to those voices, gave me more in-depth knowledge of those important stories that I think that these students were starting to understand just by being here and seeing how important that diverse heritage is to this town. And you can tell from the stories that these students just told that it became sort of, you know, the same sort of thing important to them, to not just learn about the actual structure, but to see how important everything is to the townspeople. So people came, there were students that came back. They came with their kumu, and then some of them returned a second time and brought friends with them, which I thought was really great. It shows a totally different level of engagement than just, here's your assignment, go out there and do it. They wanted more, and they weren't coming back just to learn more about their site. They just fell in love with Honokaa and wanted to come back. I want to come back and learn more. I want to walk the street when I'm not under an hour time limit, you know, just spend time and ask questions. And I was thrilled to hear these students talking about their level of engagement and meeting. I think Kaylee said she met Miles and interviewed, and that's just, I think that's outstanding that they got in there and really got some conversations going with people. I think that the sense of place is huge in a project like this, and the community has it and the students learned it. And it's the sense of pride that's going to come away with this project is wonderful for our little town. So I want to thank everybody that invited the Honokaʻa Heritage Center to be a part of this project. And I think it'll enrich both the students and our community. So thank you.
All right, mahalo, Nicole. Yeah, I heard there was a jazz festival or something one of those weekends too. I know they were coming back out for some music and food.
Always something going on.
Yeah, and just loving Honokaʻa. We're going to open it up for some Q&A here, and I know we have a few questions in the chat, but I did want to start by just asking our panel of students to maybe chime in on one more thing, and that would be, you know, about what you have learned about Honokaʻa as a whole, and maybe how you're through your site visits or how your connection to Honokaʻa has developed over the course of the project. What do you think benefited you the most in developing that connection? Anyone like to chime in? Kappa, I see you.
Yeah. The first thing I did for my research is I went to the Catholic Church, Our Lady of Lourdes, and I just walked the church property, and I just wanted to see what it looked like. And I walked the church cemetery, and there was a man who was in the cemetery, and I just was like, "Oh, hi, uncle." I'm just here to look and to appreciate. And he was there cleaning his brother's grave, and he was so willing to just talk story with me like for 2 hours, and I really appreciated that. And he had also such a wealth of knowledge. So one of the things I think about that I learned about that I think about Honokaʻa is that it's a very tight knit community. It reminds me of Makawao. I see some similarities there, and I appreciate that the people are willing to share their stories. And like Nicole had mentioned, so many people are bringing their primary documents, their pictures, their stories, and they want to share those stories as well, and add that to all of the stories that the people have brought to show about themselves. And so it's one of the things that I learned about Honokaa.
Mahalo. Anyone else like to chime in from the panel?
Yeah, I can go. I think something I learned is I think growing up in Hawaii, and I think as a Hawaiian, it's kind of hard to ask questions. It's kind of hard to ask questions, especially if you don't know them, if they're not your family, or if it's not where you grew up. And so I had a hard time. I had a hard time doing that. I had a hard time inquiring, but I think this project helped me step out of that in a comfortable space and be able to know that sometimes asking questions helps, and sometimes asking those questions helps that community. And it especially in this project where we're doing this story map, basically from an outsider perspective on Honokaʻa, it was really enlightening to know that sometimes they're just so willing to have a conversation if you just ask, just like Kepa was saying, and how some stories are never going to be shared unless you do that, like how Kepa did. And that's a skill that I'm taking away from the story map project is no need to always be shame. Thank you.
Mahalo. Anyone else from our panel about what you benefit from, or what you took away about Honokaʻa, maybe what benefited you the most in your pursuit of these stories and learning?
Go ahead. I'll say something. So I'm from Puna, Mountain View specifically, so I don't really have a direct connection with Honokaʻa. However, my family background is working class. My grandfather was part of a union of electric workers. My uncle and his cousins are still in that same union. And so I have a lot of respect for working class people, for laborers, and for the actions that people take to provide for them and get them the respect and the wages that they deserve. And so when I was researching these stories about Honokaʻa, reading about Katsugoto, about Jack Wayne Hall, about all these people trying to do right by the workers and how we directly benefit from their actions today. It wasn't until the 70s that a law was passed that enabled public employees in Hawaii to have the freedom to join a union. And so reading these stories, it really connected me with them on a personal level, but also on a communal level. Seeing them as kind of the trailblazers for all this labor relations and seeing how we benefit from that today. I thought that was really interesting. And I would say that's what I took the most from this story map project.
Mahalo, David. And then Kaylee, you wanted to say one more thing too.
Yeah, so when researching about Honokaa as like a whole town, it really made me think about my hometown. So I'm from this little town called Cohoes, New York, and people 10 miles from me don't even know about us. And we were a really big part of the Erie Canal a really long time. So it was like this big bustling city, and then it landed into no one really knows about us, and if they do, they kind of make fun of us because like, oh, Cohoes, interesting. But So it was really nice to just be able to kind of take that perspective and just really be able to jump in. And the fact that Honokaʻa, the people there just welcomed me with open arms. It didn't matter that I was from New York. If anything, it made them want to tell me even more. They introduced me to new foods, new words, the way that they've lived, their ancestors, and just really opened up all these resources. And it made me appreciate the Aina and the ohana that they built there. And it was such an amazing experience. I will definitely be taking away, but it was to be able to go and learn, and especially from the people, like I said, it was great to have that firsthand experience. And like Tuhia said, it's like to not be a secondhand historian, to actually go out there and listen to the stories and the people, and then be able to bring it to life, like Bono said. And all of you guys made such excellent points already, so I'm not gonna keep saying, but yeah, thank you. Mahalo.
Mahalo, we really do appreciate it, to all of our panelists. We do have some questions in the chat, and so we'll answer as many of these as we can. Nicole, if you're still there, one of the questions that has come up, and I think this is when you're talking about people stopping by, community members stopping by the center, a question about how those stories are recorded. And I think in a larger context, how the stories of Honokaʻa are recorded, and are they available for folks who are not on Hawaii Island to access or listen to?
If they are just people stopping by to talk story, we're not recording. If they're bringing materials into us, then we scan and keep them here. And obviously we have them sign some sort of a waiver or release to share them. So add them to our research. We tend not to record any of the talk stories just because it changes the dynamic. But if we want to do an interview in the future, we can do that. And we do have some interviews here that are available to the public that were recorded in the past. But we're not currently recording any of the interactions of people that come in and talk to us.
Okay, thank you. Mikaela, there's a question here about the Kohala story map that you mentioned. Would it be possible for you to find the link for that and put that into the chat for some folks who are interested in seeing that as well?
Oh yeah, Mikaela, I didn't see it in the chat, but I have the link in my Gmail, so I can drop it in the chat. And then I'll also drop the Huyao Pa'a website link as well, because I think someone was talking about, is there any Puna research in Mo'olelo and story maps and whatnot, and I think I saw a couple on top their website, so I'll drop both links in the chat. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Yeah, that was one of the other questions about any plans to do a story map of Pahoa and other parts of Puna. So we know that there are others that are out there, but if we partner with HHF, or if they partner with somebody else to do one of these story maps, we certainly will let folks know. Personally, speaking for UH Hilo and the history department, we would love to keep doing these types of projects. So yeah, hopefully there will be more in the future. Sorry, I just need to scroll down a little bit and see some of the other questions that have come in.
Nicole, I can say just,
oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, just in response to the continuation of story maps, yes, like this is a very important part, I think, of what Historic Hawaii Foundation represents, which is we want to be a platform for the stories of place that others tell, that others have the knowledge of. And so I so appreciate what each of you have shared on this project. And there was also another question from, I think it was from Stacy Hoshino, about the evolution of this project. Kerri, I think I sent it to you, which I can help respond to, but if you would like to start.
I didn't see Stacy's question, but I see Helen's question. Is that the same type of question about the decision-making process? Or
why don't you, would you like to address, maybe read Helen's question and then respond, and then we can talk to the bigger picture of Stacy's question. Sure.
Aloha, Helen. I'll try to answer your question. So the decision-making process on, taking information that the students gathered and then getting it onto the story map. So it's been quite an involved process because again, we have students in 2 different classes. So about 50 students doing research. So for almost every site, we had multiple entries coming from students. And so we've been bringing that information together, merging it together, fact checking, sometimes rewriting and revising, and then going through a review process first within our own Hui here at UH Hilo, and then on to Honokaʻa experts, Nicole Garcia, Wendy Tollison, Ross Stevenson, and then finally going up through HHF folks to have a final review before it's then put onto the story map site. And a big mahalo to Natalie. I don't think we've mentioned her yet today. She's the one who's actually putting everything on the story map for us, and has been greatly patient with us in putting this all together. So the story map itself is not yet launched. Again, for those who maybe have joined us a little bit later, that will be coming soon, and we will be emailing everybody with the link, or HHF will be emailing everybody with that link to bring it all together. But yeah, and then Andrea, if you want to address the other question from Stacy.
Sure. So Stacy was asking, can you explain what inspired you to create this project and the way that you and students created a perfect synergy between partners, the town with a rich history, and new tech with mapping? So would you like to start, and I can help if needed?
Sure, just scrolling down. Okay, aloha, Stacy. Well, I mean, we did the Hilo Story Map project with Historic Hawaii Foundation in the fall semester. And that, I can't even remember how that all came about, Andrea, but we got in touch with each other, and we were working with Lokilani Brandt for that one. And that was just such a wonderful experience that when Andrea said, we would like to do another one, and Honokaʻa is where we would like to go next, I jumped on it and said, yes, definitely want to do that, because this is what you heard today from our student panelists, is the same kind of feedback we got from the Hilo Story Map, that they thoroughly enjoy this type of project. They learn a great deal from it. I think they learn about themselves. They learn about their community. They learn about, our emphasis being in a history class on the past, but from the stories, right, they're learning about the present too. And they're learning about who we are as a community. And so it's just so enriching in so many ways. I don't know that we created a perfect synergy, but we certainly, it's been amazing working with our partners. And I guess I'm saying not perfect when I'm thinking about myself and my students. I love my students, and we work well together. But semesters are stressful. I mean, let's just be honest, right? Schoolwork's stressful, and there's a lot of deadlines and a lot of things to work on. And so sometimes in the moment, you don't always feel this joy and exuberance over a project until you have some time to stop and reflect on what it is that we've been doing and accomplishing. But the partnerships that we have in this, I mean, this would not be possible without Historic Hawaii Foundation. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of Natalie's.
Cultural Surveys of Hawaii. Cultural
Surveys of Hawaii. Without their giving of their time and expertise to put this all together, it's one thing for us to gather information and do the research, and we're collecting images and doing write-ups, but then to know that somebody else can do that heavy lifting of putting it all together and onto a story map site is incredibly rewarding. So I guess what I'm saying is I didn't have to worry about the technology of doing the actual mapping. And that's what largely has made it possible for us to do this from our perspective at the university, or the history department at least. Yeah.
Thank you, Kerri. Yeah, I can just say that the project evolution, just super briefly, because I really want to hear more from students, is Cultural Surveys Hawai really were the ones to come to us with this mapping and a lot of research that has basically been done over the years that needed to be shared, they felt, with the wider public, and how could we do that? And that was the evolution of the story map project, which started with Capital Historic District story map in Honolulu. And then we've done Haleiwa also in Honolulu, but every map is getting richer and more vibrant. And actually what we really wanted to do was, as I said, we want to reach out to the experts in the community, which includes people who grew up there, their lineages, also most importantly, students and people who want to work being educated and work with educators. So this has been successful beyond our wildest dreams as far as these collaborations, and it's just a joy. So mahalo to everyone for the partnership. And Honokaʻa, Historic Honokaa Town Project with Laura Ruby and Gerald DeMello and Ross Stevenson and Wendy Tolleson and Darren Igawa. Their research, as Kerri mentioned earlier, was just invaluable for the whole project. So big mahalo to them. Kerri, maybe there's some other things you want to ask the students. If we have maybe time for one more question response to the students, if you have something.
I don't have any other questions for the students, and I was just trying to look through the chat to see if we had missed any questions there. So I apologize if we have, but I don't readily see anything at the moment. Is there something that you think I've missed, Andrea?
No, actually, I just have so enjoyed the way that you've asked questions and the way everyone shared the mana'o and how impactful this has been in so many different ways for different students, how they were impacted by it, and how I feel like, are you all going to bring this forward to your future engagement with place? And do you have any inspiration behind how you might do that?
Yeah, anyone want to address that question from our panel of how you might take this forward now? Emma?
I can share a little bit.
Okay.
So personally, doing both the Kohala and the Honokaʻa one, I feel like was valuable for me. Mainly because now, like, it's kind of funny. I drive there with my ohana and I catch myself playing tourist guide. Like, I'm telling them all these places, oh, this happened there, this certain ahupua'a has this mo'olelo. So I think that's one thing that I'll really take away moving forward, is not only learning all of this mana'o and this ike, but being able to share it with my ohana, with my friends, and pretty much anybody that wants to learn, you know. So yeah, mahalo.
Mahalo for that. And I've heard some stories about other students as well, sharing what they've learned with their family, with their friends, and how inspiring that is for many of them, for all of them. So we did have one other question here from Linda Robinson about the use of Hawaiian culture and language as part of your schooling growing up. And so, you know, some of you students, you might want to speak to this as well, but many of them are indeed studying Olelo Hawaii now, or have been in high schools where Olelo Hawaii was a part of their schooling, along with Hawaiian cultural values and traditions. And so all very well versed in that. Any exceptions to that, in that, you know, people like Kaylee coming and visiting with us for a semester, doing everything she could to fully immerse herself with being here at UH Hilo and on Moku'o Keawe. I oftentimes would walk into the library Hawaiian collection and just to pick up something or talk to one of the librarians there, and there would be Kaylee researching and working on stuff and talking with other students, and just again, I think catching that infection from our other students that you see here, who are just so proud of their heritage, their culture, their language, and they continue to inspire all of us here on this campus. So just really grateful for you students for showing up today, and for all the work that you have done. And if you want to say anything more about Hawaiian language and Hawaiian culture, please take a moment to do so. But I think it really is an important part of not just this project, but what we're trying to do here with our studies.
Can I chime in on this a little bit? Sorry, you guys are probably tired of me talking, but I really like this question because actually that's one of the reasons that I decided to do a story map on the Kohala one, because personally growing up, and this is not to shade Kohala High School at all, but growing up in my schools, like throughout elementary, middle, and high, I didn't really feel like they taught us a lot about Hawaiian culture. And unless you were someone who went to like Kamehameha schools or something, I feel like you never had that opportunity. And so coming as a Kama'aina, coming from Kohala, I felt like it was really important because there's so many like mo'olelo that a lot of our younger generations have no idea about. And they'll like hear about it from kupuna and they'll be like, wow, like didn't even know that was a thing here, didn't know that existed. So I think personally, like creating story maps, creating presentations, creating like all these resources and websites and links, it's important because it keeps the stories going and it keeps that alive. Even after kupuna pass on and they can't share the stories anymore, this is how, you know, it'll live on through technology. And I really want to emphasize like the lack of Hawaiian culture and teaching in the public school systems, and it makes me sad that they don't try to teach the kids about their place, about their communities. And that's kind of the reason that I feel like we should continue making these resources. So I really like that question. Mahalo.
Okay, I'll just say mahalo once again to everybody for attending and for all of our participants, and to Historic Hawaii Foundation. And Andrea, allow you to close us off today. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Kerri. Mahalo to each of you. I've been really, really touched and moved, as I know our audience from their comments have been, by everything that you shared. So appreciate that. I want to mahalo nui loa to Kumukai, or Kerri, or Professor Inglis, Nicole Garcia, to Emma, to all of you, all of our student panelists. And we're really inspired and hope that you will, when the map is live, share it with your communities and with your friends and family. And I want to thank our audience for joining us, including all the people who are still on with us. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed this presentation and panel and are inspired by what you've seen. And I want to give a big mahalo to my colleague, Michelle Kisik, who's been providing technical support and has been part of the story map, the Honokaa story map team. And we've already done this, but I think it warrants doing it a second time, is to mahalo Natalie and Jacob, Cultural Surveys Hawai, and Cultural Surveys Hawai in general, for inspiring, launching, and being present to support this project with GIS technology and their time and wisdom and knowledge. And big mahalo to Ross Stevenson, Wendy Tollison, Laura Ruby, the other contributors from the Historic Honoka Town Project, including Gerald DeMello, Emeritus UHH, Darren Igawa, UHH, and Laura Ruby, retired from UHM, for their hard work and dedication to creating the content that led to the Honokaa story map. They've been documenting, doing historic register nominations, plaques. There's just a lot of really wonderful things going on in Honokaa to document and share the stories. To Nicole Garcia for, there's going to be some audio clips and things that will also be shared as part of the story map, and for all the work that you and your volunteers and your team are doing. And for those who would like to find out more about Historic Hawaii Foundation, support our work so we can continue programs like this, please visit historichawaii.org. And also a mahalo to our grantor, which we had recognized in the beginning. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day and week and weekend. and wish you all the best for you and your loved ones. Take care and mahalo nui loa. Aloha, everyone.